Comedy is all about timing, and Jerry Lewis always hit the mark. Tonight, fans are remembering the comic genius who died at age 91.
Dean Martin spoke the truth about Jerry Lewis, 6 words that ended everything. The will told the rest. Jerry had 6 sons. When he died in 2017, his estate was valued at $50 million. Every son, Gary, Ronald, Anthony, Christopher, Scott, and Joseph, was listed by name. And every one of them received nothing. Not money, not possessions, not even something sentimental. The document made it unmistakably clear. The word intentionally appeared twice, placed there by Jerry himself so no one could question what he meant. Joseph, the youngest, never even saw that moment.
He spent a half-century raising money for Jerry's kids, raising more than $2.5 billion.
He had died 8 years earlier at 45, alone in a small apartment in Utah. Before his death, he wrote to his father again and again. Every letter came back unopened. To the public, Jerry Lewis was something else entirely. America's beloved comedian. The man who helped raise over $2.5 billion for children in need through decades of telethons. A figure built on laughter, generosity, and relentless energy. But one person saw something deeper long before the truth became public record. His partner, Dean Martin. The man who stood beside him for 10 years, helping build one of the most successful acts in entertainment history, then walked away without explaining why. Dean never gave interviews about it, never told his side, but in 1956 he said 6 words and never spoke of it again. Those 6 words are where this story leads. 2 men, 1 stage.
It landed him a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, a look back at his life.
If you've never heard of Martin and Lewis, here's what mattered. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, they weren't just popular. They dominated American entertainment. 16 films, a national television show, nightclub performances that sold out before dates were even announced. Dean Martin was the singer, an Italian-American from Ohio with a smooth voice and effortless charm. He had presence, the kind that made people relax the second he walked into a room. Before Jerry, he was working steadily, good enough to survive, not yet destined for legend. Jerry Lewis was the opposite, loud, physical, explosive. Born in Newark to vaudeville parents who were often gone, he grew up chasing attention. He learned early that laughter made people stay, and he built his entire identity around that idea. They came together almost by accident in 1946 at a struggling Atlantic City club. Both were on the verge of being fired, so they tried something different. Dean sang. Jerry interrupted, crashing through the act in a busboy uniform, turning everything into chaos. The audience lost control. They laughed harder than they had at anything before. That moment changed everything. Within a year, they had a radio show. Within 2, television. Within 3, a contract with Paramount Pictures. From the outside, it looked effortless, like lightning captured and controlled. But inside the act, something else was forming.
Star in the 60s with films like The Nutty Professor, Cinderfella.
There's a truth about comedy duos most people never see. One person carries the weight, the other gets the credit, and those roles don't always belong to the same man. By 1950, the numbers told part of the story. $15,000 a week from radio, films pulling in $20 million each, and in 1953, a groundbreaking $35 million television deal with NBC, the largest of its kind at the time. They were everywhere. Magazine covers, radio, film, television. In every city, crowds followed them. Women threw hotel keys, desperate for a moment of attention. But if you looked closely, really closely, you'd see a pattern forming in the headlines. It was always Jerry Lewis first. Jerry Lewis, the genius, the comic force, the reason audiences showed up. And then almost as an afterthought, Dean Martin and his voice. Not Martin and Lewis, Jerry Lewis, and his singer. It appeared often enough that it stopped sounding accidental. It became definition.
Part of it had to do with his back injury that he had suffered when he was doing pratfalls when he was younger.
Dean noticed. He just didn't react the way most people would. He wasn't confrontational. He didn't argue, didn't demand correction. He watched. He listened. And quietly, he started understanding what was happening. Jerry had always handled the mechanics of their act. Structure, pacing, the rhythm of the performances. That was his domain. But as their success grew, so did his sense of ownership. By the early 1950s, Jerry wasn't just performing in their films anymore. He was shaping them. Every scene, every line, every shot came under his influence. Directors adjusted because it was easier than pushing back. Then, in early 1954, something happened that said more than any argument ever could. Jerry fired their head writers, Ed Simmons and Norman Lear, just like that. No discussion, no warning, no conversation with Dean. Those writers had one crucial responsibility, making sure both men were funny, making sure Dean had presence, moments, balance. Removing them didn't just change the writing, it shifted the center of gravity. Norman Lear would go on to shape American television in ways few others ever have. But in that moment, that future didn't matter. What mattered was this.
So here was a guy who had had a lot of loss. One of his sons committed suicide.
The people who protected Dean's place in the act were gone, and the man who removed them didn't even think it was worth mentioning. That's when direction becomes destiny. Then came the moment that made everything unmistakably clear. In 1954, Look magazine ran a feature on Martin and Lewis during a film shoot, a major spread, the kind of exposure that reinforced their dominance. Jerry was in the photos, front and center, filling the frame with one of his signature expressions. Big, exaggerated, impossible to ignore. Dean wasn't there, not in the corner, not blurred in the background, not cropped out, just gone. That afternoon, Dean walked into the dressing room and found Jerry already flipping through the magazine, laughing. "Dean, you've got to see this," Jerry said. "They made me look like a giant." He wasn't wrong. He looked larger than life, because there was nothing beside him to bring him back down to scale. Dean looked at the page. No recorded response, no confrontation, no scene. But the people who were there remembered his face, and it wasn't amusement. The issue wasn't the magazine. Publications make choices every day. They frame stories, highlight angles, create narratives.
He'd lost most of the people who were his friends over the course of his life.
The moment mattered because of Jerry's reaction. The laughter, the pride, the complete absence of awareness. He didn't notice Dean was missing. That's what made it land. This wasn't cruelty. Cruelty implies intent. This was something colder, quieter, and far more difficult to fix. Dean Martin had become invisible to his own partner, and once that happens, there's very little left to repair. Partnerships can survive a lot. Creative differences, uneven credit, long hours, ego clashes, all of that can be managed. But there's one breaking point that rarely heals. The moment you realize the other person no longer sees you. Dean reached that point in 1954, standing over a 2-page magazine spread where he didn't exist. After that, everything changed, but quietly. There were still contracts to fulfill. 3 more films, appearances to make, obligations already signed. Dean didn't argue, he didn't explode, and he started counting. The final film they made together was Hollywood or Bust, produced in 1956 under Paramount Pictures. By then, whatever connection they once had was gone. They barely spoke, only when the camera demanded it. Not dramatically, no shouting, no broken furniture, no walkouts, just silence. A quiet, settled absence of communication between Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. They stopped speaking directly. Messages passed through the director, Frank Tashlin.
He had a very celebrated life. He accomplished a lot, but I think it wasn't fun to get old even for Jerry Lewis.
They arrived on set separately, rehearsed apart whenever possible, performed together only because contracts required it. And the moment filming ended, they drifted to opposite sides of the room. Years later, Jerry would write about that time in his memoir. He admitted the truth plainly. We continued to perform together, but we weren't really speaking. He described holding on to hope, almost like a child believing things would somehow fix themselves. Deep down, he knew better. Dean left nothing behind. No memoir, no explanation, no interviews dissecting what happened. He did what he always did when something ended. He went quiet and waited. To the audience, none of this existed. In Las Vegas, New York, and across the country, people saw the same flawless act, the same rhythm, the same chemistry, the same laughter. Two men who seemed completely in sync. No one in those seats realized they were watching something that had already ended. It takes a certain kind of discipline to do that, to show up, deliver, and excel at something you've already decided to walk away from. But before it was over, there was one final moment. 6 words. It happened during a rehearsal on the set of Hollywood or Bust, their last film with Paramount Pictures. The scene had been moving normally. Dean was ready, lines memorized, position set, waiting for the cue. Then Jerry stopped everything. He walked across the set in front of the crew, the cast, the director, and corrected Dean, not quietly, not privately, publicly, telling him how to deliver his next line, not a suggestion, a correction. One man instructing another how to do his job, with an audience watching. Dean glanced at Tashlin. No intervention came. So Dean did the take exactly the way Jerry asked. And later that same day, he found him. After 2 years of watching, measuring, understanding, he said what it had all come down to. "You're nothing to me but a dollar sign."
To provide for my family, and when I work, it's serious work.
That's the line as Jerry Lewis recorded it decades later. The only version that exists because Dean never told his side, but Jerry remembered it clearly enough to write it down 50 years later. That kind of precision doesn't come from exaggeration, it comes from impact. Dean wasn't making a speech. He wasn't arguing or accusing. He was stating a conclusion. He had watched long enough to understand what he had become, part of a machine, a valuable piece of a highly successful product. The partnership worked because the product worked, and once it stopped working for him, there was nothing left underneath it. Jerry's response, silence. According to his own account, the ever-present smile disappeared instantly, like a switch flipped off. After that, there was nothing more to say. They finished the film, completed the press obligations, honored their final nightclub engagement at the Copacabana in New York on July 25, 1956, exactly 10 years after the night they first stepped on stage together. The audience didn't know it was the end. They stood, they applauded, some cried. What they saw was history. What they didn't see was that it was already over. After the final show, Dean walked out one exit. Jerry left through another. And then came the silence. 20 years of it. No calls, no meetings, no reconciliation, nothing. In that silence, Dean Martin became the man most people remember. A member of the Rat Pack, a television star, a recording artist, a performer who built a career entirely on his own terms. He rarely spoke about Jerry Lewis. When asked, Dean Martin would give a sentence, maybe 2, then move on. No bitterness, no reflection, just distance. Jerry didn't move on the same way. Almost immediately after the split, he signed a $10 million deal with Paramount Pictures, the largest Hollywood had ever seen at the time. He stepped fully into control, writing, directing, shaping every piece of his work, total authority, and some of it worked. The Nutty Professor became both a critical and commercial success in 1963. In Europe, especially in France, critics treated him like an auteur. Intellectuals analyzed his visual style. They called him a genius. In America, the response was colder, more cautious. But inside the industry, something else was taking shape, something that had nothing to do with box office numbers or reviews, stories. They circulated quietly at first, then more openly. About behavior on set, about control, about how far that control extended. There were accounts of last-minute rewrites that dismantled other people's work without warning, of impatience with small mistakes, of a working environment where everything depended on his approval. For some, that approval became a kind of currency, and if you didn't have it, you paid the price. Actresses who worked with him during that period described sets where challenging him wasn't an option, not if you wanted to keep working. Karen Sharp, who appeared in The Disorderly Orderly, later recounted an experience that surfaced years after his death in a Vanity Fair investigation. She said she had been called to his office under the pretense of a costume fitting. That wasn't what happened. She refused him, walked out, and for the rest of the production, she said, he ensured that no one spoke to her. No cast, no crew, silence. It worked. No one on that set had enough power to risk defying him, and yet, publicly, Jerry Lewis remained something very different. Every Labor Day, he hosted the Muscular Dystrophy Association Telethon, a decades-long effort that raised billions for children suffering from devastating illness. On those broadcasts, he was warm, emotional, fully present. The man people believed in, and then the cameras would turn off. He would return to the world he controlled. What he couldn't control was memory, what others carried with them long after the work was done. And sometimes, memory brings people back. In 1987, tragedy struck Dean Martin's life. His eldest son, Dino Martin Jr., died in a military aircraft crash on March 21st. He was 35 years old. Dean had 7 children. By most accounts, Dino was the one closest to him. The funeral was private. Jerry Lewis came anyway, alone. He didn't announce himself, didn't approach the family, didn't sign the guest book. He stood at the back of the church in the shadows for the entire service. Then he left, quietly. No one noticed. That was the point. Later, someone told Dean he had been there, that Jerry had stood in the dark, making sure he wasn't part of the story. That night, Dean made a call. According to Jerry's memoir, the voice on the other end said, "Hey, Jar," 2 words, and decades sitting behind them. They spoke for over an hour. Both of them cried. At one point, Dean said, "Life's too short, my friend." That was the real reconciliation, not the famous 1976 reunion staged by Frank Sinatra on television. The moment where they hugged, laughed, and gave the world something unforgettable. That moment mattered, but it was still a performance. 2 masters doing what they had always done best. The phone call in 1987 was something else entirely. No cameras, no audience, just 2 men, older now, carrying everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. One of them reaching out, not because of history, but because of what the other had done in silence. In 1989, Jerry appeared unannounced at Dean's 72nd birthday celebration in Las Vegas. No build-up, no introduction. He just walked in. Dean saw him, held him, and said, loud enough for the room to hear, "I love you, and I mean it." No performance in that either. Just truth, finally spoken without distance. 6 years later, Dean Martin was gone. Jerry Lewis lived another 22 years. He kept working, performing, appearing in films and on stage well into his 80s. But for all the success, all the control, all the years, there was always that gap in the story, the one that started with 6 words and took a lifetime to close. When Jerry Lewis was asked about Dean Martin's death, he said Dean was sad and lonely, and that's how he died. There's something in that sentence that lingers. A man who spent his life building audiences, filling theaters, commanding attention, raising billions through the Muscular Dystrophy Association telethons, describing another man's loneliness as if it were a failing, as if it were something Dean chose. But Dean Martin never told his version. No memoir, no long interviews revisiting the past. no attempt to reshape the narrative or defend himself. He didn't argue in public. He didn't explain. He said 6 words in 1956 in a room full of witnesses to the one person they were meant for. And then he went to work. Jerry Lewis did the opposite. Over the next 6 decades, he tried to explain everything. In books, in interviews, in documentaries. He even wrote a memoir centered on Dean, calling their partnership a love story. He described it as something rare, almost sacred, and at times he expressed that loss with real clarity, sometimes even beautifully. But there was always another side to that story. The same man who could articulate love so precisely also made decisions that were harder to reconcile. In his will, he listed each of his sons by name and made sure they received nothing, not one of them. Joseph, already gone by then, had spent his final years writing letters to his father, letters that came back unopened. His brother Gary later said he believed that rejection broke Joseph in a way nothing else did. And through all of it, Dean Martin, who said almost nothing, seemed to understand everything. There's a version of this story where Jerry Lewis is seen as complicated, deeply talented, emotionally layered, capable of genuine feeling, but also carrying a kind of distance he couldn't close with the people closest to him. That version is probably true. But Dean didn't need decades to analyze it. He saw it early. In 1954, standing in a dressing room looking down at a magazine spread where he had been erased. And he made a decision most people in his position don't make. He named what he saw once, clearly. And then he left. No speeches, no public unraveling, no attempts to rewrite history, just distance. The question this story leaves behind is simple, but not easy. When someone shows you who they are, not just once, not in a moment of anger or weakness, but consistently in the quiet, everyday choices they make when no one is watching. How long do you wait before you believe them? Dean Martin had his answer after 10 years. Jerry Lewis's sons lived their entire lives inside that same answer. So what do you think? Was Dean right to walk away and say nothing? Or did his silence allow everything that followed to happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. I'll see you in the next video.